The ship came down hard through the orange clouds of aura. Daniel Cooper held tight to his seat as the hull screamed and sparks flew from every console. He had been a salvage worker for 12 years and he had survived bad landings before. But this was not a landing. This was a fall. The ground rose up to meet him, and then everything went dark. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was lying in the wreckage of his ship. His body hurt everywhere, but nothing seemed broken. He pulled himself out through a hole in the hull and looked around. The ship was finished. Smoke rose from the engines and the fuel cells had cracked open. He would not be flying anywhere. The planet around him was harsh and unwelcoming. The sky was a sick orange color and the air smelled like metal. In the distance he could see tall structures that looked like temples or monuments. They were old, very old. The stone was black and covered with strange symbols. Daniel checked his emergency kit. He had water for 3 days, food for 2, and a small medical pack. His radio was dead. His beacon was dead. Everything electronic had been fried by whatever had pulled his ship down. All he had left was his grandfather's old hunting knife, a rusted thing he kept for sentimental reasons. It had no power cell, no edge worth mentioning. It was just old steel. A storm was coming. He could see the clouds gathering and they looked wrong. The wind was picking up and it carried dust that stung his skin. He needed shelter. Daniel made his way toward the nearest temple structure. The doors had fallen long ago and the inside was dark but dry. He stepped inside and waited for his eyes to adjust. The walls were covered with carvings, pictures of beings he did not recognize. Tall creatures with too many limbs, short creatures with no limbs at all. This place was old, older than the who claimed this world as sacred ground. He walked deeper into the temple, looking for a place to set up camp. The storm outside was getting worse. He could hear it howling through the broken doors. As he walked, he noticed the floor sloping downward. He was going underground without meaning to. Then he found the stairs. They led down into darkness. Daniel turned on his flashlight and pointed it down. The stairs went far, very far. Something about them made him curious. He had always been curious. It was why he became a salvage worker. He liked finding things that others had forgotten. He went down. The stairs ended in a corridor. The corridor ended in a door. The door was covered with inscriptions in dozens of languages. Daniel recognized some of them. Old, ancient, even some Earth standard from the early colonial period. All the inscriptions said the same thing in different words. Do not open this door. Do not free what lies within. Turn back. Daniel stood there for a long moment. He thought about all the stories he had heard about ancient prisons and sealed evils. He thought about how those stories usually ended for the person who ignored the warnings. But he also thought about how he was stuck on this planet with no ship and no rescue coming. If there was something down here, he wanted to know what it was. He pushed the door open. The chamber beyond was vast. His flashlight could not reach the ceiling. In the center of the room, suspended by chains that glowed with soft blue light, was a figure. A woman or something shaped like a woman. She had pale skin that seemed to shimmer. Her hair was long and white and floated around her as if she was underwater. Her eyes were closed. Her body was thin, too thin, like she had not eaten in years. The chains held her arms spread wide and her feet off the ground. They were not metal. They looked like crystal, like frozen light. They pulsed with a slow rhythm like a heartbeat. Daniel walked closer. His footsteps echoed in the vast space. As he approached, the woman's eyes opened. They were silver, pure silver with no pupil or iris. They looked at him and he felt like she was seeing everything he was, everything he had ever been. She spoke. Her voice was dry and cracked from centuries of silence. Another one comes to try. Daniel stopped walking. Try what? To break the chains, to free me, or to kill me. She smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Many have tried both. None have succeeded. Daniel looked at the chains. How long have you been here? 300 years, perhaps more. Time loses meaning in this place. What did you do? The woman was quiet for a moment. I defended my people. I killed those who came to destroy us. They decided I was too dangerous to live but too powerful to kill. So they built this prison and they put me here and they hoped everyone would forget. Daniel looked at the inscriptions on the walls of the chamber. More warnings. More pleas to leave this place alone. The warnings say not to free you. Yes, they say I'm a monster. Perhaps they are right. Are you? She looked at him with those silver eyes. I do not know any more. I have had 300 years to think about what I did. I have had 300 years to feel guilty for every life I took, even the ones who deserved it. But I do not know if that makes me less of a monster or more of one. Daniel walked around her, looking at the chains from different angles. He could see scorch marks on them, cuts that had healed, dents that had smoothed out. People have tried to break these before. Many people, warriors with plasma blades, priests with holy fire, scientists with antimatter cutters. The chains absorb energy. The stronger the weapon, the stronger they become. Daniel pulled out his grandfather's knife. It was rusted and dull and completely worthless as a weapon. I have this. The woman looked at the knife. For the first time, something like interest flickered in her ancient eyes. That is not a weapon. That is a relic. It has no power. No, it does not. Then why do you carry it? Daniel looked at the knife. It was my grandfather's. He gave it to me before he died. He said it reminded him that sometimes the oldest tools are the most honest ones. The woman stared at him. What is your name, human? Daniel Cooper. I am the last of the, she paused. Will you try to free me, Daniel Cooper? Daniel looked at the chains. He looked at the warnings on the walls. He looked at the ancient woman who had been hanging here for 3 centuries, alone in the dark, waiting for someone to come. I have not decided yet, he said. Tell me more about these chains. Smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real this time. You are the first one to ask questions before swinging a blade. Perhaps you are smarter than the others. Or perhaps I am just more scared. Fear and wisdom often look the same. Daniel sat down on the cold floor and looked up at her. The storm raged somewhere above them. He had nowhere else to go and nothing else to do, so he listened as she began to speak. Told her story in a voice that had not spoken to another soul in 3 centuries. Daniel listened without interrupting. He had learned long ago that people who needed to talk should be allowed to talk. She told him about her people had been old when most species were still learning to make fire. They had the ability to touch life energy itself. They could heal wounds with a thought. They could make plants grow in dead soil. They could sense the heartbeat of every living thing around them. It was a gift, she said, a sacred gift. But others saw it differently. There were a powerful species who controlled a vast dominion across hundreds of worlds. They were not cruel by nature. They were simply afraid. They could feel the life force of others. What if they learned to take it? What if they could kill with a thought as easily as they could heal? They looked at thee and saw a threat that might one day destroy them. So they decided to destroy the first. The war lasted 6 years, had been a guardian, a protector of her people. When they came with their warships and their soldiers, she fought back. She used her power not just to heal but to harm. She learned to reach into the life energy of her enemies and twist it. She killed hundreds, then thousands. She became exactly what they had feared. But it was not enough. There were few and there were many. One by one her people fell. Worlds burned. Cities crumbled. Families were torn apart and scattered to the void. By the end was the last one standing, the last in the entire galaxy. They captured her after a battle that lasted 3 days. They tried to execute her, but her body would not die. Her kind were nearly immortal, sustained by the life energy that flowed through all things. So they built a prison that did not rely on walls or guards. They forged chains from something stranger than metal. The chains are not physical, explained. They are philosophical. They were forged from the concept of guilt itself. Daniel frowned. How can you forge a chain from a concept? They were masters of metaphysical engineering. They could take abstract ideas and give them form. Guilt, regret, shame. They poured all of these into the chains and bound me with them. The chains do not hold my body. They hold my soul. I do not understand. Looked at him with her silver eyes. The chains can only be broken by someone who carries no guilt, someone who has never done wrong, or who has somehow freed themselves from the weight of their past mistakes. Every warrior who came to free me carried the blood of battles on their hands. Every priest carried the memory of prayers they failed to answer. Every scientist carried the guilt of knowledge misused. The chains sensed their guilt and grew stronger. Daniel thought about this. He thought about his own life, the mistakes he had made, the people he had disappointed, the times he had failed to be the person he wanted to be. He was not innocent. No one was. Then no one can break them, he said. Everyone carries guilt. That is what they believed. That is why they chose this prison. They thought they had found a perfect cage. But you said many have tried. Yes, and they all failed. Some because their guilt was too heavy, others because they used weapons that fed the chains with energy. The strongest warriors fell the fastest. Their powerful blades only made my prison stronger. Daniel looked at the rusted knife in his hand. This has no power, no energy to feed the chains. No, it does not. But I still carry guilt. I have made mistakes. I have hurt people even when I did not mean to. Studied him, her eyes seemed to look through him past his skin and bones into something deeper. You carry guilt, yes, I can sense it, but there is something different about you, about your kind. Humans. Yes, I have met many species in my long life. I have touched the life energy of thousands of beings, but I have never met anyone like humans before. You feel guilt as deeply as anyone, perhaps more deeply, but you do something with it that others do not. Daniel waited for her to continue. You forgive yourselves, said. Not easily, not quickly, but eventually you learn to let go. You feel the weight of your mistakes, you carry them for a time, and then you set them down and walk forward. Other species are defined by their guilt forever. It becomes part of who they are. But humans have this strange ability to accept their failures and move beyond them. Daniel thought about this. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in a war and done terrible things but had somehow found peace in his final years. He thought about his mother, who had made mistakes raising him but had never stopped trying to be better. He thought about himself, all the times he had failed and all the times he had gotten back up. I do not know if that makes us wise or foolish, he said. Perhaps both. Perhaps that is what makes you dangerous. Daniel stood up. He walked toward until he was close enough to touch the chains. They hummed with a soft energy. He could almost hear voices in that hum, accusations, regrets, the echoes of 300 years of guilt. He raised his grandfather's knife. It was a simple tool, rusted steel and a worn handle. It had no edge worth mentioning. It had killed nothing in 50 years. This is a foolish idea, he said. Yes, it is. It will probably not work. Probably not. Daniel pressed the blade against the first chain. He expected resistance. He expected the chain to push back, to grow stronger, to throw him across the room like it had done to the warriors before him. Instead, he heard a crack. A thin line appeared in the crystalline surface of the chain. Then another. Then a web of fractures spreading outward from the point where the rusted blade touched the glowing surface. His eyes went wide. It is working. How is it working? Daniel did not answer. He did not know. He just kept pushing, kept pressing that worthless old knife against the impossible chain, and the chain kept cracking. The first chain shattered, then the second, then the third. Arms fell to her sides and her feet touched the ground for the first time in 300 years. She stumbled, her legs too weak to hold her weight. Daniel caught her before she could fall. I have you, he said. She looked up at him with wonder in her ancient eyes. 300 years, thousands of warriors, and a human with a rusted blade sets me free. Above them, somewhere in the temple, an alarm began to sound. The prison had been breached. Someone would come to investigate. Daniel helped stand. Can you walk? I do not know. I have not walked in a very long time. Then lean on me. We need to get out of here. She put her arm around his shoulders and together they moved toward the door. Behind them, the broken chains lay scattered on the floor, their glow fading into darkness. The last was free, and everything was about to change. The alarms echoed through the ancient temple like the screams of angry gods. Red lights flashed in corridors that had been dark for centuries. Daniel helped up the long stairs, one step at a time. She was weak, so very weak. 300 years without food or water or movement had left her body barely functional. Only her connection to life energy had kept her alive. How far? She asked, her voice strained. I do not know. I came down a long way. They kept climbing. Daniel's legs burned and his lungs ached, but he did not stop. He could hear sounds above them now, footsteps, voices, that had come. They reached the top of the stairs and found themselves in the corridor with all the warnings. The words seemed to mock them now. Do not free her. Do not open the door. Turn back. Daniel had ignored all of it and now they were running for their lives. This way, he said, guiding toward the temple entrance. They made it halfway before they found them. There were 6 of them, tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms each. They wore armor that shimmered with protective energy. Their weapons were sleek and deadly. At their head stood a commander with golden markings on his armor. His eyes widened when he saw. The prisoner is free, he said. His voice was calm, but Daniel could hear the fear beneath it. How is this possible? Commander said. She stood a little, drawing on reserves of strength Daniel did not know she had. I remember your grandfather. He was there when they put the chains on me. Raised his weapon. You should have stayed in your cage, monster. I would have, but this human had other ideas. All 6 turned to look at Daniel. He suddenly felt very small and very mortal. His grandfather's knife was still in his hand, but it would be useless against their armor and shields. A human said. A human broke the chains of guilt. How? I do not know, Daniel admitted. I just wanted to help. Help? You have released the most dangerous being in the galaxy. You have doomed us all, pointed at them with one of his 4 hands. Kill them both, now. The opened fire. Daniel moved on instinct. He pulled behind a stone pillar as energy blasts tore through the air where they had been standing. The pillar cracked and groaned under the assault. It would not last long. Can you fight? Daniel asked. I can barely stand. Then we run. They ran. Daniel half carried through the temple, using pillars and walls for cover as they pursued. Blasts scorched the stone around them. One shot grazed Daniel's arm and he cried out in pain but kept moving. They reached a large hall with multiple exits. Daniel chose one at random and they plunged into another corridor. This one sloped upward. He could feel fresh air ahead. They were getting close to the surface. Stop, said suddenly. Daniel stopped. What is it? They are ahead of us. I can feel them. Before Daniel could respond, 3 more appeared at the end of the corridor. They were trapped. Enemies behind them, enemies ahead. Get down, said. She pushed Daniel aside and raised her hand. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Daniel felt something shift in the air. It was like the pressure before a storm, like the moment between lightning and thunder. The 3 ahead of them froze. Their weapons fell from their hands. They clutched at their chests and their eyes went wide with terror. She is using her power, one of them gasped. She is killing us. But she was not killing them. Daniel could see her face. Her silver eyes were closed and her brow was furrowed with concentration. She was not trying to hurt them. She was trying not to. "Sleep," she whispered. The three collapsed. They were still breathing. Daniel could see their chests rising and falling. She had only put them to sleep. Stumbled, and Daniel caught her again. Using her power had cost her. She was even weaker now. "Why did you not kill them?" he asked. "Because I am tired of killing. I have killed enough for 1,000 lifetimes." She looked at him with exhausted eyes. "You freed me from chains of guilt. I will not forge new ones." They stepped over the sleeping and continued up the corridor. Behind them, Daniel could hear and his soldiers closing in. They burst out of the temple into the harsh light of Ara's sun. The storm had passed, but the sky was still orange and angry. Daniel looked around for somewhere to go, somewhere to hide. There was nothing, just ruins and dust and the temple behind them. And his soldiers emerged from the temple. They spread out, surrounding Daniel, and there was nowhere to run. "It ends here," said. "The monster will be returned to her prison, and the human will be executed for desecrating sacred ground." Daniel stepped in front of it. Was a foolish gesture. He had no weapon that could help them, but he did it anyway. "She is not a monster," he said. "She had every reason to kill your soldiers just now, and she chose not to. A trick, a manipulation. They are masters of deception. She was imprisoned for 300 years for defending her people from genocide. Your people killed everyone she ever loved, and when she had the chance for revenge, she showed mercy." Daniel's voice grew louder. "How does that make her the monster?" Hesitated. For just a moment, doubt flickered across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. "Enough talk, kill them." They raised their weapons. Daniel closed his eyes and waited for the end. But the end did not come. Instead, he heard a sound, a roar from above. He opened his eyes and looked up. A ship was descending through the orange clouds, a human ship, a military with the Earth Alliance insignia on its hull. The weapons came online and opened fire on the ground between and their prisoners. The soldiers scattered, diving for cover. A voice boomed from the ship's speakers. "This is Lieutenant Maya of the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon. We received a distress signal from this location. All parties stand down immediately." Daniel had never been so happy to hear another human voice in his life. His emergency beacon must have sent a signal before it died. Someone had come. They landed and the ramp lowered. A woman in military armor stepped out, flanked by 4 soldiers with weapons raised. She took in the scene quickly, her eyes moving from Daniel to the and back again. "Who wants to tell me what the hell is going on here?" she asked. Daniel opened his mouth to answer but spoke first. "He saved me," she said, "and now I ask you to save us both." Maya looked at for a long moment. Then she looked at Daniel, battered and bleeding but still standing between a wounded alien and an armed enemy. "Get on the ship," she said. "Both of you, we will sort this out later." Daniel did not wait to be told twice. He helped toward the ramp as the shouted protests. Commander's voice rose above the others. "You cannot take her. She is our prisoner. This is a violation of sovereignty." Maya turned to face him. "File a complaint with Earth Alliance Command. Until then, this human is under my protection, and anyone with him." She stepped onto the ramp and it began to close. The last thing Daniel saw was face, twisted with anger and fear. Then the ramp sealed shut and they lifted off into the orange sky. They were not safe yet, but they were alive, for now that was enough. They rose through the orange clouds and into the black void of space. Daniel sat against the wall, holding his injured arm while a medic applied bandages. Sat across from him, wrapped in a thermal blanket, looking smaller and more fragile than any ancient being should look. Lieutenant Maya stood between them, arms crossed, studying them both with sharp eyes. "Start talking," she said, "and do not leave anything out." Daniel told her everything. The crash, the temple, the warnings, the chains. Filled in the parts he could not know, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. By the time they finished, Maya's expression had shifted from suspicion to something harder to read. "So let me understand this correctly," Maya said. "You found an alien imprisoned for 300 years by chains forged from the concept of guilt, and you broke those chains with a rusted knife because humans process guilt differently than other species." "I know it sounds strange," Daniel said. "It sounds insane, but I have been in this job for 15 years and I have seen stranger things." Maya turned to, "They say you are a mass murderer." "I killed many of them, yes." "They say you are too dangerous to be allowed to exist free." "They may be right." Maya's eyes narrowed. "You are not helping your case." Looked at her directly. "I am not trying to help my case. I am trying to tell you the truth. I was a guardian of my people. When they came to destroy us, I fought back. I killed soldiers, commanders, pilots, anyone who stood between me and my people. I became exactly what they feared, and in the end it did not matter. Everyone I loved still died." There was quiet except for the hum of the engines. "I spent 300 years in chains, feeling the weight of every death I caused. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not ask for it, but I am tired of being a weapon. I am tired of being a monster. When your people freed me, I could have killed every in that temple. I chose not to." "I noticed," Maya said, "you put 3 of them to sleep instead of stopping their hearts. Why?" "Because the human showed me something I had forgotten. He broke my chains not because he was innocent, but because he knew how to let go of his guilt and move forward. Humans do not carry their mistakes forever. They learn from them and then they release them." Silver eyes were wet with tears she had not shed in centuries. "I want to learn how to do that. I want to put down the weight I have been carrying." Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she sighed and uncrossed her arms. "They are going to cause problems. They consider that planet sacred ground. Technically, Daniel violated their laws by entering the temple." "I crashed there," Daniel said. "I did not choose to land on their sacred planet." "Try explaining that to their diplomats." Maya ran a hand through her hair. "We are heading to Station Caldera. Earth Alliance Command will need to be informed. There will be questions, a lot of questions." "And then what?" Daniel asked. "I do not know. They will demand she be returned. Earth Alliance may or may not agree. It depends on politics I do not pretend to understand." Maya looked at. "For what it is worth, I believe you. I have seen enough liars in my career to know when someone is telling the truth." "Thank you, Lieutenant." "Do not thank me yet. I cannot promise anything." The journey to Station Caldera took 6 hours. Daniel spent most of it sitting next to, talking about small things. He told her about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests, and the way the sun looked when it set over the mountains. She told him about a place of crystal cities and singing winds that no longer existed except in her memories. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "Every moment of every day, but missing something does not bring it back. I learned that long ago." "How do you keep going, knowing everything you loved is gone?" Considered the question. "For a long time I did not want to keep going. The chains held my body, but my spirit had already surrendered. I had given up. And then you came. I did not do anything special. I just asked questions and tried to help." "That is exactly what made you special. Everyone else who came to my prison wanted something. They wanted to free me so I would fight for them. They wanted to kill me so they would be famous. They wanted to study me so they could learn my secrets. But you just saw someone who was suffering and wanted to help. No agenda, no demands, just kindness." Daniel felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I am not a good person. I have made plenty of mistakes." "Yes, and you learned from them and moved on. That is what makes humans remarkable." Reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool but not unpleasant. "My people believed that the universe was built on balance. Light and dark, life and death, guilt and forgiveness. We understood the first half of each pair. We could touch life itself, but we never learned how to let go. We held on to everything, good and bad, until the weight crushed us." "That sounds exhausting." "It was. It is why we never grew beyond even with all our power. We were too burdened by our past to reach for the future. But humans are different. You carry your history, but you do not let it define you. You fall down and get back up. You make mistakes and try again. It is maddening and beautiful, and I think it might be the key to something important. The key to what? Smiled, it was a real smile, warm and genuine. I do not know yet, but I would like to find out. The docked with Station Caldera an hour later. Maya escorted them through the station's corridors, past curious faces and whispered conversations. Word had already spread. A human salvage worker had freed an ancient alien prisoner from a sacred site. Everyone wanted to see them. They were taken to a conference room where 3 Earth Alliance officials waited. The questions began immediately. Daniel answered as best he could, sticking to the truth. Did the same. The officials recorded everything, their faces giving nothing away. After 3 hours, the questioning ended. The officials left to consult with command. Daniel and were given a small room with 2 beds and told to wait. What happens now? Asked. Now we wait, Daniel said, and hope. I have spent 300 years waiting. I can wait a little longer. She sat on one of the beds and closed her eyes. Within moments, she was asleep. Actual sleep, not the forced unconsciousness of her prison. Daniel watched her for a while, this ancient being who had seen more than he could imagine, who had suffered more than anyone should suffer, who was now trusting a species she had just met to decide her fate. He pulled the thermal blanket up over her shoulders and sat down on the other bed. He did not know what would happen next. They might demand her return. Earth Alliance might hand her over to keep the peace, or they might grant her asylum and cause a diplomatic crisis that could lead to war. But for now, in this small room on a space station far from anywhere, an ancient prisoner slept peacefully for the first time in 3 centuries, and a human salvage worker with a rusted knife had made it possible. Sometimes, Daniel thought, the smallest acts of kindness could change everything. He closed his eyes and waited for tomorrow to come. 3 days passed on Station Caldera. 3 days of waiting and worrying and wondering what would happen next. Daniel spent most of that time helping her regain her strength. She ate real food for the first time in 300 years. She walked on her own legs without support. She stood by the observation windows and watched the stars, tears running down her silver-eyed face. I had forgotten how beautiful it all was, she said. On the 4th day, they were summoned to the command center. Lieutenant Maya met them at the door, her face carefully neutral. The decision has been made, she said. Come with me. They followed her through corridors filled with busy personnel. No one looked at them now. The novelty had worn off. They were just another problem waiting to be solved. The command center was a large room filled with screens and consoles. A dozen officers worked at various stations. At the center stood Admiral Wells, a stern woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. Next to her, on a large display screen, was the face of Commander. Ah, said when he saw, the monster arrives. I am not a monster, said calmly. I am a survivor. Admiral Wells raised a hand. We are not here to trade insults. We are here to resolve this situation. She turned to face Daniel and directly. The Dominion has demanded that be returned to their custody immediately. They claim she is a war criminal and a danger to galactic peace. She defended her people from genocide, Daniel said. That is one interpretation, they have a different one. Wells looked tired. Legally, this is complicated. Ara is territory. You entered it without permission. You interfered with a prisoner. By their laws, you are both criminals. And by human laws? Asked. Wells paused. By human laws, you are an asylum seeker fleeing persecution. We have treaties that protect individuals from being returned to places where they face torture or cruel punishment. 300 years in chains certainly qualifies. His image flickered with anger. This is outrageous. She is a mass murderer. She killed thousands of our people. In a war you started, Maya said quietly. A war of extermination against her species. That is propaganda. They were a threat. We acted to protect ourselves. You wiped out an entire civilization because you were afraid of what they might become. His voice was steady, but there was pain beneath it. My people never attacked anyone. We healed the sick. We helped crops grow. We did nothing to deserve extinction. Your power was too great. You could not be allowed to continue. So you murdered us, children, elders, families who had never held a weapon in their lives. You burned our cities and scattered our ashes, and then you put me in chains so I could spend eternity remembering what you had done. The command center was silent. On the screen, his face was hard, but his eyes betrayed something else. Doubt, perhaps, or shame buried so deep he had forgotten it existed. Admiral Wells spoke again. Earth Alliance Command has reviewed the situation carefully. We have decided to grant provisional asylum pending a full hearing. She will not be returned to custody. This is an act of war, said. No, this is an act of conscience. They were exterminated 300 years ago and is the only survivor. She has harmed no one since her release. She has demonstrated restraint and mercy in situations where violence would have been justified. We will not hand her over to be imprisoned again. His image leaned forward. You do not understand what she is capable of, what she could become. She could destroy your entire species. Stepped forward. Then let me speak to you directly, Commander. I could have killed your soldiers on Aura. I did not. I could have fought my way out and left a trail of bodies behind me. I did not. Do you want to know why? Said nothing. Because a human taught me something your people never understood. He broke my chains not with power but with the simple ability to forgive himself for his mistakes. He showed me that guilt does not have to be a prison, that the past does not have to define the future. Silver eyes were bright. I spent 300 years hating you, dreaming of revenge, but hatred is just another chain, Commander, and I am done with chains. She took a deep breath. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, not because what you did was justified. I forgive you because holding on to that hatred will only destroy me. I forgive you so that I can be free, truly free, for the first time in 3 centuries. The silence stretched on, stared at her through the screen. His face was unreadable, but his hands, all 4 of them, were trembling slightly. This is not over, he said finally. The Dominion will not accept this. Perhaps not, Admiral Wells said, but that is a problem for diplomats to solve. For now, stays with us. The screen went dark, was gone. Wells turned to Daniel and, you should know that this decision may have consequences. They have powerful allies. There may be pressure to reverse our position. I understand, said, and I am grateful. Thank the humans who voted for this. Most of them had never heard of the before last week, but they listened to your story and they decided that 300 years of punishment was enough. Wells allowed herself a small smile. We are a stubborn species. We do not like seeing people in chains. Later, Daniel and stood by the observation windows again. The stars burned cold and distant against the black void. What will you do now? Daniel asked. I do not know. I have no home, no people, no purpose. Looked at him. What do you do? I am a salvage worker. I find broken things and fix them, or I find things people have forgotten and give them new life. That sounds like meaningful work. Daniel laughed. It is mostly boring. Long hours in space, poking through wreckage, hopping to find something valuable. It does not sound boring to me. It sounds peaceful. They stood in silence for a while. Then Daniel spoke again. I could use a partner, someone to help with the heavy lifting. Someone who can sense life energy might be useful for finding organic salvage. Turned to look at him. Are you offering me a job? I am offering you a choice. You can stay here and wait for politicians to decide your future, or you can come with me and build a new one. You barely know me. I could be everything they say I am. You could be, But you chose not to kill when you had the chance. You chose forgiveness over revenge. That tells me more about who you are than 300 years of history." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, uncertain and hopeful at the same time. "I would like that, working with you, finding broken things and fixing them." "It is a deal then." They shook hands. Human and salvage worker and ancient prisoner. Two people who had met by accident and chosen to walk the same path by design. A week later, they left Station Caldera on a small salvage ship called the Second Chance. It was not much to look at, but it was fast and reliable, and it was theirs. Daniel piloted while sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the stars stream past. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Wherever we want. That is the beauty of this job. The galaxy is full of forgotten things waiting to be found." Looked out at the endless expanse of space. Somewhere out there were the ashes of her people, scattered across 100 dead worlds. Somewhere out there were the who had destroyed everything she loved. But she was not going to look for them, not for revenge, not for answers. She was going to look forward, not back. "I like the sound of that," she said, "finding forgotten things." Daniel smiled. "Welcome to the crew." The Second Chance jumped to and disappeared into the stars. Behind them, chains lay broken. Ahead of them, the future waited, unwritten and full of possibility. For the first time in 300 years was free, and she was not alone. That made all the difference.